Summer 1940, France. German troops march through occupied Paris while the collaborationist Vichy regime governs the unoccupied south. Promising order yet deepening division. The country becomes a landscape of hunger, suspicion, and quiet despair, where loyalty is tested and betrayal spreads like a shadow across everyday life. As Nazi control tightens, the occupiers search for informers in every corner of society. Even within the church, an institution once seen as a refuge in times of turmoil. Some priests shelter the hunted, others keep their distance, but a few servants of God choose the darkest path, trading conscience for power and protection. Among them emerges a figure whose deceit will shock even seasoned resistance fighters, a man remembered as one of the most dangerous collaborators in German-occupied France. His name is Robert Alesch. Robert Alesch was born on March 6, 1906 in the small town of Espelt in southern Luxembourg. His father was a French patriot who came from Lorraine, a border region long disputed by France and Germany. According to later accounts, Robert Alesch's father was allegedly tortured by Germans during the First World War. While those wartime events shaped his family's memories, Robert Alesch's own life moved in a different direction. He pursued religious studies in the Swiss city of Freiburg, and in 1933 he was ordained as a Catholic priest. In 1935 Alesch moved to the Parisian suburb of La Varenne, Saint-Hilaire, where he became assistant vicar, a role he held for 8 years before becoming vicar of the parish. His fiercely anti-Nazi and openly pro-Allied sermons increased the trust people placed in him, especially the women who were drawn to his confidence and charisma. The Second World War started on September 1, 1939 when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. On May 10, 1940, German forces launched a rapid assault into the Low Countries and northern France, striking with armored divisions and relentless air attacks. Their units pushed through the Ardennes, a region the French command had considered too difficult for large-scale movement, and soon bypassed the heavily fortified Maginot Line. French and British troops were forced into retreat, and the defense of the country collapsed with alarming speed. By mid-June, German columns were advancing toward the capital, and Paris fell on June 14, 1940. After the French leadership fled south to escape the advancing German forces. Several days later, France signed an armistice that divided the nation between a German-occupied zone and a nominally independent administration in the south, setting the stage for years of hardship and collaboration. The fall of France reshaped every aspect of daily life. Under occupation, German intelligence expanded its reach, searching for informers who could penetrate communities the authorities struggled to access. Churches, once seen as sanctuaries, became places where trust could be manipulated and where a well-placed figure could cause extraordinary damage. It was in this climate of fear and uncertainty that Robert Alesch began the most destructive phase of his life. In 1942 he was formally hired by the Abwehr, the German military intelligence service. Bilingual in French and German, Alesch used the occupation of France as an opportunity to advance his own interests. Acting not out of ideological conviction but out of personal ambition and a desire for self-enrichment, he soon began living the double life that would make him notorious. Paid for the information he supplied, he maintained an apartment on Rue Spontini in the 16th arrondissement of Paris, an elegant and affluent district where he lived with his two mistresses, Geneviève Guillemette and Renée Audry. Alesch relied on their loyalty, and both were described as devoted to him body and soul, serving as his accomplices whether they understood it or not. Alesch received instructions to infiltrate resistance groups and to make himself indispensable, ideally by being appointed as a liaison officer. Once inside, he was expected to identify as many resistance fighters as possible and report their names to his superiors. One of the most significant victims was Germaine Tillion, a leading member of an early resistance network and later one of France's most respected anti-Nazi figures. Her group worked closely with the Réseau Gloria or Gloria Network, an important resistance organization founded by Gabriel Picabia and led in the field by Jacques Legrand. In 1942, these networks cooperated with a second group in the French city of Lyon, maintaining contact with London General de Gaulle and Allied intelligence. Alesch infiltrated Tillion's circle during this period. And like many others, she was persuaded by his confident manner and his apparently passionate hostility toward the Nazis. He was entrusted with a task of critical importance: carrying messages from Paris to Lyon. Instead of delivering them, Alesch passed everything directly to the Abwehr, which ensured the material never reached the Allies. His actions crippled communications between the networks, opening the door to a wave of arrests. Tillion was also in contact with a network led by Pierre de Vaumecourt, one of the early organizers of armed resistance in France. In 1942, the Abwehr had arrested de Vaumecourt and held him in Frasnes prison, and his comrades searched desperately for a way to secure his release. Alesch, always presenting himself as resourceful and well-connected, claimed he could obtain the cooperation of a German officer if they paid him 300,000 francs. The resistance paid the money. Alesch kept the entire sum and then denounced everyone involved to the Abwehr. De Vaumecourt remained in prison, and on August 13, 1942, Jacques Legrand, Germaine Tillion, her mother, and the main leaders of the Gloria Network were arrested. Over the rest of the month, roughly 80 members were taken into custody. Those detained were held in Paris prisons, where they faced long interrogations and, in several cases, torture by the German police. They were later transferred to the camp at Fort de Romainville, then deported to the concentration camps of Buchenwald, Mauthausen, and Ravensbrück. Legrand, his deputy Thomason, and many others did not return from deportation. Among them was Germaine Tillion's mother, Émilie Tillion, a French writer and art critic, who was murdered at Ravensbrück concentration camp in Nazi Germany. Throughout this period, Alesch continued supplying information to the Nazis, receiving 12,000 francs per month, the salary of a high-ranking officer, along with bonuses for each person he betrayed. The Gloria Network was not the only French resistance organization that Robert Alesch infiltrated. He also set his sights on Virginia Hall, the American-born agent working for the British Special Operations Executive or SOE, whose operations in Lyon played a crucial role in linking resistance groups to London. The SOE was the British wartime organization responsible for supporting underground movements across occupied Europe through sabotage, intelligence gathering, and covert supply. By May 1942, Hall had agreed to transmit messages from the Gloria Network to the British, unaware that Alesch was already preparing to insert himself into her contacts. In August of the same year, he presented himself as a courier connected to Gloria and offered intelligence that appeared valuable. Hall doubted him at first, especially after learning that Gloria had been dismantled. When questioned about his slight German accent, he claimed he was from the Alsace and reinforced the story with emotional claims about his father being killed by German soldiers. He had spouted anti-Nazi rhetoric during their meeting and delivered what appeared to be extremely useful intelligence on the Atlantic Wall, the massive but still incomplete coastal fortifications that Hitler hoped would prevent an Allied landing in France. After winning Hall's confidence, Alesch slipped into her network of couriers and wireless operators, setting off a chain of arrests and sending false messages to London in Hall's name. Many of those captured did not survive. Alesch was then sent to Normandy with orders to infiltrate local resistance groups and identify anyone involved in sabotage or intelligence activity. He carried out these instructions with the same methodical approach he had used elsewhere. According to post-war documents, he was responsible in this region for 34 arrests, followed by shootings or deportations. 28. Resistance members were either executed or did not return from the concentration camps. The Second World War in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. 3 months later Alesch was arrested in Brussels and Belgium by American authorities and immediately handed over to the French police. During questioning he offered a partial confession but repeatedly attempted to minimize his responsibility. His behavior before the Court of Justice, where he was tried alongside his 2 mistresses, was described as particularly odious and arrogant. At one point the presiding judge pressed him to confirm whether he had been born in Luxembourg. After twice refusing to answer, he finally declared, "I was a Luxembourger. I became a German. Constrained and forced, I did my duty as a German and a soldier." He then attempted to argue that a miscarriage of justice had occurred, and tried to delay proceedings, claiming that after effects of the Spanish flu he had contracted in 1918 should be considered an attenuating circumstance. Court-appointed psychiatrists rejected this argument, concluding that he was perfectly aware of his actions, and the judges noted that Alesch showed perfect lucidity of mind. The court ruled that his crimes had been committed with full knowledge of the facts by an intelligent, skillful and deceitful accused, and therefore no mitigating circumstances could apply. While one of Alesch's mistresses received a prison sentence and the other was acquitted, he was found guilty of intelligence with the enemy and condemned to death. When Robert Alesch was executed by firing squad on January 25, 1949, he was 42 years old.